So many big decisions to make at such pivotal times oftentimes cause a lot of people to panic in fantasy, but we're not sparing any expense. Everything is being left on the table for the fantasy playoffs. Starting out with our first tier of tight ends, we've got to make business decisions. I've got George Kittle one spot over Trey McBride while he maintains in the same tier. George Kittle, to me, you've got a better position to be in. You're going to play the Tennessee Titans off of a bye week. This defense is not very good, and I would rather take the shot on that matchup than Trey McBride's matchup in Houston. That is one of the single toughest matchups for any passing game. Not just quarterbacks, not just receivers, tight ends as well. They're very affected, and Trey McBride had a little bit of a down game last week against the Rams defense, also a good defense against tight ends. So I do kind of wonder if we're dealing with a mortal here with Trey McBride, where previously I didn't think that was the case. So to me, he's still obviously a great player that could be the tight end one on any given week. But this week, I'd rather take the bigger matchup with a big play upside guy like George Kittle than I would rather take the shot on Trey McBride. Dropping down to that next tier, I've got Dalton Kincaid at 3 and Brock Bowers at 4. Once again, it's all about business decisions here. Dalton Kincaid at New England, the guy has been very involved. And listen, I think one thing's become clear with Buffalo over the last several weeks, which is that Buffalo, their only trustable receivers are actually tight ends, because you cannot rely on Khalil Shakir every week to give you 10 targets and 7 catches out of those 10. They go a lot to their tight ends, and Dalton Kincaid is a big upside guy because he gets a lot of work down the field and in the red zone. So to me, in a matchup that's a must-win for them, where it feels like Josh Allen is about to put on the Superman cape again, I'll go with Kincaid over Bowers, who is going to Philly, and that's not even the worst part. He's got Kenny Pickett this week. Let me tell you this, guys. I said this yesterday. Geno Smith sucks. Like, I get it. Kenny Pickett is about to be working behind the deli counter at your favorite local supermarket by next year. Like, Kenny Pickett belongs nowhere near the NFL, and guess who's got an eye on him? Philadelphia, because they had him last year. They know this guy sucks. They know every weakness he has. Basically, they know maybe one strength of his that they have to stop. And Brock Bowers is obviously going to be absolutely taken out of this game. So once again, this could be too high of a ranking, but I will not put him much lower than this because he was able to buck the trend last week when he put up points against Denver. We know he's an elite player. It just comes down to me not trusting the matchup. Harold Fannin Jr., the guy is definitely separated in Cleveland as the number 1 tight end. Goes to Chicago this week. Now, I will be honest with you. This matchup is very tricky, and I took a lot of extra time on this matchup in particular because a lot of people have asked me about Shedeur this week, and I don't think he's actually one of the worst starts, but I will say this weather in Chicago is unreal. They have a high of 10 degrees as of right now, and it's a low of 0. And this is a matchup that's going to be in -degree wind chill. So I don't love the passing game in this one. But I will make this clear. Harold Fannin is the tight end one by far. And he's a dude that you can just kind of rely on at this point to make some big plays and have a very safe floor. So I would take him at 5. Dropping down to our next tier. Jake Ferguson's at 6, and Juwan Johnson is at 7. So Jake Ferguson, we don't know if he's playing for sure. He is dealing with injury right now, so we'll keep an eye on this one. But I think for me, Jake Ferguson is kind of just, he is what he is at this point, which is probably not the most upside, belonging in tier 1 or tier 2 since CeeDee Lamb has been back. Now, if CeeDee doesn't play, Ferguson becomes a much more interesting option. But if he does play, then Ferguson's got to be around this range because I think his floor is solid enough to where you could kind of count on a consistent 7 or 8 points or so. And I would say his ceiling is around 15. So against the Vikings, I don't love the matchup, but I do like the consistency that we've been seeing with him lately. Juwan Johnson at 7 versus Carolina, the matchup is actually okay. And Juwan Johnson at this point is kind of in that Jake Ferguson territory for me, where I feel like I just can trust the guy, right? Like Juwan Johnson is so involved in this offense, even with Chris Olave. He's been more fluctuating over the past several weeks because of injury. Juwan Johnson has been kind of the stabilizing point in that offense for the passing game. So to me, it feels pretty trustworthy to count on an 8 to 10 points from Juwan Johnson as well. And that's money at the tight end position. Travis Kelce is at number 8. Listen, I would actually prefer to just kick him to the curb after last week, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense to me. He's older. The guy's in his mid to late 30s at this point. No wonder he's not looking good in December. But it is still one of those things where it's like their backs are against the wall, and it does feel like he could bounce back. Like, we've seen a lot of bad from Kelce this year, and I've been at the forefront of saying I was wrong on him because I didn't want to draft him. He's done very well, though. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I would like to just use recency bias to just confirm my own biases towards Travis Kelce that I had before the year started. But at the same time, he's done well enough to be able to make me acknowledge, hey, I was wrong about this one. So I do have him at 8 here. He's not a safe play. You just saw what happened, but I think he still does belong in the top 10. Dallas Goedert at 9 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I think I was a little overzealous ranking him down too low too. Now, the one problem with him that Kelce doesn't have is that he does fall victim to just becoming irrelevant in the game plan. Because the thing is, with Kansas City, at least we know they're going to give Kelce his targets. With Goddard and the rest of Philly, you have no idea who's getting the ball on a weekly basis because they don't even know. That offensive coordinator is garbage. Jalen Hurts was garbage the other day. Against the Raiders, the matchup makes sense for him to have another good game, but at the same time, he could come out here and give you 2 points. So it's just really tricky with a guy like Goddard. He's in that same category as Kelce where it's like, it's not a safe play, but the upside is there. Hunter Henry at number 10 to round out the tier versus Buffalo in a must-win matchup for New England too, and they're coming off a bye week. This is, again, one of those guys that can definitely lose favor in the passing game and does kind of evaporate sometimes, but other times he can give you an enormous ceiling. We're talking 25 plus that we can get from Hunter Henry. And the way May has been playing, I kind of want to bank on every option in the passing game for New England. So I do think Hunter Henry belongs in the top 10. Dropping down to that next tier, Dalton Schultz. Listen, guys, I like Schultz. And I drafted actually a bunch of them in best ball because I had a lot of metrics that would say to do that. So I don't obviously have a problem with the matchup versus Arizona. It's a good one. The reason he's not in the tier above him is because he doesn't have the upside of like a Henry. He can't give you 25. He can't give you 20 plus like Dallas Goedert. He can't give you, the Travis Kelce, the Juwan Johnson, the Jake Ferguson upside. At best, you'll get like 16 to 17 points with Schultz, which is fine, and it's good, but he's not an end zone threat most of the time. He's mostly never going to get you yards after the catch, so he has to be down the field or in the end zone for him to score or get big plays. So that's the reason here that he's never going to be a massive, like, big tier guy, but I do think it's still worth having him at 11. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, man, it's tough because these Baltimore tight ends, I think that both of them could have really good games and one of them could go off. It's in Cincinnati. You obviously want to take advantage of the matchup. They can't cover a tight end, so they're both good options. The reason I'm leaning Likely here, and this is from a personal decision I've had to make with Isaiah Likely, is because Isaiah Likely is a guy that just gets more targets down the field. With Andrews, if you're not getting a touchdown, he's not going to do very well for you. It does feel like an Andrews touchdown type of game, but I have trouble saying that I don't think Likely is a good play here because Likely has been involved in recent weeks, and he's just a more heavy target guy. So if it's between those two guys, I think I'm going to go with Likely, but it's still very close. So I'm going to put it to the test on our site, fsroundup.com, and I'm going to start a poll right now. So I'm going to look up Isaiah Likely, then I'm going to go to chat, then I'm going to go to start a poll for week 15, and I'm going to add Mark Andrews to this, and I want you to go vote on it. It's free to vote. It's free to start your own poll. And if you want access to my top 310 rankings this week, you want access to the automatic waiver feature, which, by the way, is saving people's leagues this year, and we got an email from a user this past week to prove it. Sergio was very happy with everything. You could see exactly what he said to us on the screen right now, so we had a very happy guy using the automatic waiver tool to lock up his number one seed. That's why I've been saying to you guys, it's a league-winning feature right here. So Sergio, I appreciate it. I'm glad you got use out of it. Hopefully this will inspire others to turn their seasons around and make sure they're going to get a championship by using the automatic waiver tool. You can also access the comparison feature and the league sync-up feature on the site as well with a premium subscription at fsroundup.com. Now, dropping down to our last tier here, Brenton Strange is at 14, and Darren Waller is at 15. Brenton Strange, Darren Waller, they both disappointed this past week. I was kind of getting on board with Brenton Strange as kind of a league-winning tight end, while also acknowledging we haven't seen like a massive target game yet. And that is kind of the downside of this. I don't think we're going to see that because they've got a lot of weapons here. Jacoby Myers, I believe, is the number one target. I would say Brenton Strange and Brian Thomas Jr. kind of split time as that number 2 target. But I do like the fact that he gets down the field. I like the fact that he's a red zone threat. And I like the fact that his matchup this week is great. So that's why I've still got him in the top 15 plays this week at the tight end position. With Darren Waller, the same thing applies. He's not a target guy. He never will be. This is not that kind of offense. But he can get down the field, and he is a red zone threat. Their best red zone threat, by the way. So in Pittsburgh, they've been bad against tight ends for a long time now. I do see this one as a very successful matchup to play Darren Waller in. Now, would I play him over those other guys? No. That's why I had to rank him lower because his floor is really low. But I do feel like this is a potential ceiling type of game, to be completely honest with you. Tyler Warren at number 16. I was asked a lot, do I have concerns with this whole offense, specifically Tyler Warren? And the answer obviously has to be yes. Like, as fun and as much as I love talking about this Phillip Rivers story, you do have to look at reality here. Like, father time comes for everybody. And Phillip Rivers has not played in an NFL game since like 2020, 5 years ago. So there's just no way he's going to be able to sling the ball down the field like he used to. And it's a matchup against Seattle where it feels so brutal. I mean, this is like, it doesn't get any harder than this. So I just can't see how this one is a ceiling game. Maybe the only saving grace if he can get a bunch of targets short. So we'll see if that happens. But I've got to mitigate some risk this week by putting him at 16. Now let's go to our quarterbacks here. Josh Allen, to me, is at number 1. And Joe Burrow is in tier 1 as well at number 2. So Josh Allen, the matchup, if you looked at it the first time they played New England, he did okay. He had like a 20-point game based on depending on your format of which you play. Josh Allen, though, think about it like this. Their backs are against the wall. They need to win this game to not only keep pace with a possible division title, but to also keep pace in the playoff race in the AFC. So you're basically in this position, if you're Josh Allen, where you have to be Superman. And that's what he did last week. And I kind of feel like it's another Superman type of game. And either way, I said this last week and I was ranking him too. He feels like the only guy that can give you 40 points. So why would I ever put him outside of tier 1 unless it was an egregiously tough matchup like he had against the Texans a couple weeks ago? Newsflash, the Patriots are good, but they're not the Texans defense, so he's at number 1. Joe Burrow versus Baltimore. The history versus Baltimore is fantastic, and I think that Joe Burrow is on a mission right now. Now, the only thing that concerns me, it may not concern you as much, but if you didn't listen to his press conference on Wednesday, guy sounds a lot like Andrew Luck right before he retired. Like, he is definitely going through some things in his head, wondering if it's worth it. I'm worried about that, and I would be really bummed if the guy retired. That's kind of aside the point for this week, though. What I'm trying to say is this week, I do think it's a good matchup. I do think Joe Burrow has been lights out since coming back, and he's not rusty. So as long as they can keep him upright, Joe Burrow's going to be great. Dropping down to that next tier, Lamar Jackson at 3 and Jackson Dart at 4. Lamar Jackson in that same matchup proved me wrong a little bit last week when he came back and he ran for a touchdown against the Pittsburgh Steelers and did pretty well through the air outside of one bad interception. Realistically, should have had another touchdown throw to Isaiah Likely as well. That would have improved his fantasy game to about a 24 to 25 point game. Do I think Lamar still has that 35-plus point ceiling that he's always had? No, I don't, because I still don't think he's fully healthy. But it is obviously a matchup that's fantastic. I do want to take advantage of it again, even though a couple weeks ago I said, if you can't do it against Cincinnati, and he didn't, then I'm out. I'm back in because of the Pittsburgh performance, and we know the ceiling is still pretty good with him. Jackson Dart. I love this play this week. My wife is playing him in her league, and I totally endorse it. It's a great matchup. They're coming off a bye week. And if you just look at Jackson Dart's game log, there's one bad game in there. And I'm talking one. So, like, you want to compare him to Jalen Hurts really quick. Jalen Hurts crushed a lot of people last week. He crushed me, kicked me out of the playoffs in one of my home leagues. I'm pissed at him. But Jackson Dart, even in his worst game against the Patriots in that one Monday night game before the bye week, wasn't terrible. Like, it wasn't great, but that's the thing is Hurts doesn't use his legs. He could, but he doesn't. Dart is a better thrower than Hurts, and he uses his legs. So Dart this week against Washington, everything lines up for a good week to me. Matt Stafford at 5 and Drake May is at 6. Matt Stafford versus Detroit. Listen, man, this guy has done awesome. And you kind of just have to enjoy it because we may never, it's probably unlikely that we ever get a season like this out of Stafford again from a fantasy perspective. So you just got to ride it. I mean, it's versus his former team. This is a revenge game for both teams. Not as much revenge for Stafford because he's done better in Los Angeles, but you know what I mean. Like, he's going to want to show up his old team, and they have been really bad through the air. The only concern here is the offensive line being able to hold up against the pass rush, but they're a better offensive line than Dallas. So I don't have the confidence issues that I had with Dak last week the same way I do with Stafford. I think Stafford is a really good play this week. Drake May versus Buffalo. Listen, Drake May has been just really good. Like, he's been a really good NFL player, better than a fantasy player. Like, May is never going to kill you. And that's kind of why he's got to be in tier 2, because you kind of know what you're getting with Drake May. He's never going to give you less than like 17 to 16 points. That's kind of his floor, which makes it really comfortable when he can score 25 points. I don't know if this is the matchup for him. I kind of feel like one of these division type of games is going to get tough. It's going to get rowdy. And I do think they're going to put up a good fight in Buffalo. But I also think that Drake May coming off a bye week is probably going to be a good thing for a top 6 ranking. Jalen Hurts at 7 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Listen, guys, there is nothing I personally would love more than to kick Jalen Hurts to the curb. He eliminated me from playoffs last week. I hate that those playoffs started in week 14. I do not like that about that league, but it was my only home league. I've been kicked out of playoffs because of Hurts. He was atrocious. I want to kick him to the curb, but guys, I'm a fantasy football YouTuber. I can't just react off emotion. This is an excellent matchup. It is, and it's the only bad game that Hurts has put up all year. Hurts has put up a couple like 10 to 12 point stinkers, but they're not they're not week crushing. This past week was week crushing, but I don't think it's going to happen a second straight week. This is the perfect game for the Eagles and Hurts to get back on track. So yes, I'm going to have him in tier 2 still at the bottom of it, but he still belongs in tier 2 based on matchup and what he's done the majority of the year. Dropping down to that next tier, I've got Brock Purdy at number 8 and Patrick Mahomes at number 9. So Brock Purdy, I've said a lot to a lot of people this week. I think he's a really good play. Versus Tennessee off of a bye week. We haven't seen him put up like a massive performance yet, but I do think it's there, and especially as he's getting more weapons back. On the offensive and on the defensive side of the ball, kind of just feel like it's starting to come together a little bit for San Francisco at the right time. So against the Tennessee Titans, it's obviously a matchup you want to take advantage of. I don't see Brock Purdy being super mistake prone in this game. It's in home field, so I don't think that Brock Purdy is in bad position, and there's just no way I feel like he's going to bust this week. So I'd rather play him over a guy like Mahomes, who I actually think has a massive bounce back week this week. I tried to warn people all last week. It was not a good play against the Texans. Some people chose to play him, which is fine. It probably killed you, though, because Mahomes was bad. And I don't think it's going to repeat itself against the Chargers. Listen, the Chargers, while they're very good and they're a formidable group defensively, they're not the Texans. The Texans, I keep trying to say this, is elite. That defense is unbelievable. You have to fear them if you have fantasy options. With the Chargers, you don't have to fear them to that same level. So I do think Mahomes has a better week, but I could still see this one going awry. So I've got him in tier 3 for that reason. Dak Prescott at 10, and Baker is at 11. So Dak Prescott, a lot of people may want to see him higher because I had him a little lower last week too. I've actually got him ranked lower than I did last week because Minnesota's defense keeps proving on a weekly basis, you be even functional offensively, and we will do well defensively. So I do think at this point, you got to factor in Minnesota's defense. Like Dak, I'm not saying it's going to be a bad day. I think he has a chance to be better than he was against the Detroit Lions, but I also think that this offensive line hasn't looked great lately, and they could let up some pass rush against the Vikings, who are really good with the pass rush. So I'm still a little worried about this one. Dak does not feel like a surefire lock this week to me. Baker, though, he was outside of our rankings last week. I was right on it, and people gave me a lot of crap for it. I'm not trying to just mess with you guys. Baker was left out for a reason last week. It didn't work. Baker this week, though, it's a little different because he's got Mike Evans coming back. He's got Jalen McMillan coming back. So I'm not saying that McMillan particularly is going to be effective in this offense and used, but he has depth and he has other guys to take pressure off of Egbuka and off of Chris Godwin. So there's a lot more weaponry at his disposal, and it's against a matchup that makes a lot of sense. So Baker does feel like tonight could have one of his ceiling games, but based on the way he's played, because I don't think he's healthy, and I've been saying that for a while, but based on the way he's played, I can't rank him much higher than this. Jared Goff at number 12. You know, it's funny because as I was putting together the rankings for the week, I actually kind of anticipated Goff to be a little bit higher in the rankings because I like the matchup. Like, the Rams are a tougher defense, but it's a game he's going to feel at home. It's in Los Angeles. He's a Cali kid. He played with the Los Angeles Rams. This feels like one of those situations that could work out in his favor. But it kind of was a little surprising to see him at 12. But then I added it up, and I was like, yeah, it's because his floor is just really low, and his ceiling isn't as high as it used to be. And I have to kind of stick with that because I don't think we're going to see a 30-point game here. I think at best we can get a 23-point game, which is going to be good. Kind of Baker-esque, though, where it's not the 30-point ceiling that he had last year. So I've got to just be honest and say that's the reason he's only at 12 and not a little bit higher. Dropping down to our last tier. Trevor Lawrence is at 13 and Sam Darnold is at 14. So Trevor, in my opinion, actually could be a really solid play this week. But he feels a little unstable because of the fact that I don't trust him to throw a bunch of touchdowns in this game. This does feel like it could be a strong Travis Etienne game because the Jets have been so bad from every perspective on the defense, particularly, though, against the run lately. So it does kind of feel like one of those Etienne/run-heavy games from the Jags. But either way, I think Lawrence belongs inside the top 15 because he uses his legs and he's been pretty efficient throwing the ball lately. Sam Darnold versus the Indianapolis Colts. This matchup is great. And Darnold last week was great. It's all kind of matchup and situational dependent with Darnold. And even sometimes he's not great. So I can't put him much higher than this because I'm not realistically going to tell you to play Darnold over Dak or Darnold over Baker or Goff this week. I don't see that level of floor with Darnold because he's done a lot of bad work this year from a fantasy perspective. But obviously, this week in the matchup, I do think it's ideal for you to take a shot if you need to stream a quarterback this week. Justin Herbert at 15 and Jordan Love at 16 to round us out. Justin Herbert's a dog. I mean, this guy really is a dog. And I watched him try to blow off an ESPN reporter after the Monday night win, and I loved every bit of it because the guy was like, get out of my way. I'm trying to celebrate with teammates. I love that dog in him. Like, the guy played through a broken hand, and it wasn't excellent for fantasy. But I will say this, it wasn't bad either because he still runs the ball. That's the thing with Herbert. He's got legs, and he's not afraid to use them if it means they'll win. It's a must-win game against Kansas City. This will be another dog type of performance from Herbert, who I don't think is super high upside this week, but he's going to be good enough to give you a top 15 floor. And then Jordan Love at Denver. This is a defining moment for Love. If he wins this game and he plays well and throws 3 touchdowns, he's going to shoot towards the top of the MVP voting. This is a huge game. And the way that things have gone for him, the last month or so, it's trending up. I mean, last week in Chicago, that was not an easy matchup. Not in Chicago, but it was not an easy matchup. Even though the Bears are beatable from a matchup perspective, Love is showing a lot of fight, and he's got his weapons back. So that's kind of the reason I prefer Love over someone like Marcus Mariota or even Bryce Young in a better matchup. Feels like things are just clicking in Green Bay at the right time. But obviously, this matchup is so tough in Denver that I can't put him any higher than this. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings on the week, click on this video right here.